Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to one of Naseej Academy Roundtable series that aim to share knowledge, ideas, and reflection on topic of interest, new trends, and rapid technology in the field of learning, libraries, cultural institution, knowledge, management, and digital transformation. In today's roundtable, we will talk about the innovation in library design, reimagining the space. But before I will pass the baton for our moderator, Mr. Ayub, I will give about 2 to 3 minutes to introduce Naseej Academy, the host of this event. Naseej Academy is a community initiative stemming from a social vision. Simply, it's a not-for-profit initiative that acting as a platform, Naseej, trying from it to serve the community and trying to as well give this awareness for the people. As you see here, we're trying to work as the academic and also community arm for Naseej so that we give the opportunity for the people in the Arab region mainly to have more knowledge about different area of interest. How we start? The idea go back for 1993. We used to have as a Naseej to give some contribution and support for a well-known organization library field in the region, like the FCILIP Association, the Gulf area. And we launched as well some awards on this one. Then the idea grow a little bit and starting to give some awards for the best paper in SLA as well again, and also support the Saudi Libraries Association and publish the magazine which is called Sada or Echo of the Union, which is for the Association for Federation for the Arabic Federation for Library and Information, ALM. Then the ideas grow more, and we have training course and also having this outstanding student is one, and also giving a grant for the student and librarian to attend the IFLA conference. And here we go, the main year 2016, the official launching of Naseej Academy as a not-for-profit. And since now until this day that I'm telling you, which is the next year will be about a decade of our age, we're trying to serve the community as much as we can. So till now, and so far we have many and many events like webinars, workshops, and lecture, and also knowledge cafe as you see this one. And this round table, by the way, one of these activity, we have different speakers from different areas. And last but not least, we build a very strong and strategic partnership with a very well-known and distinguished association and universities and other entities. And as you see in this right side, we're proud to sponsor many grants. I think the top of it is Mortenson grant to attend the Mortenson Center Associate Program to stay for about 1 month at the United States to learn, engage, and also come back to develop their organization. This is what I have from my part about Naseej Academy. And as you see that we can look to our website to have more information about Naseej Academy. And let's go back to our roundtable for today. And I am honored to introduce my a friend and also the expert, Mr. Ayub Khan. Mr. Ayub Khan is a director of designing libraries and published author. For example, he has this very distinguished book, Better by Design, an introduction to planning, designing, and developing library building. Mr. Ayub also is a head of library and cultural services for Warwickshire County Council at UK. He is fellow and past president of FCILIP, the UK Library Association, and he is awarded an MBE for service to libraries by the King Charles on 2013. Last but not least, Mr. Ayub. He's the president and trustee of Library Connected Sector Support Organization in England, and he published many articles and books. And I will pass the knowledge baton for him to introduce our speaker and also share with us his thoughts and vision for the library design, which is now its intellectual space, workspace, and also non-shush space. We have a different point of view. Please, Ayub, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah, for those very sort of kind sort of words. I do hope that we will keep this session very informal and there will be opportunities for discussion, asking sort of questions. And what we might do is, if I explain the format for the session, then we'll ask when each speaker presents, they can introduce themselves just prior to their presentation across that. So what we're hoping to do today is I'll start off with some very sort of key trends and drivers in libraries, which I've been sort of researching for some time. What are people doing in libraries in a very holistic, high-level area in terms of design trends happening around the world. And then we'll basically ask Karen Latimer whether she will then talk about a specific about how librarians, how library staff get involved in the library sort of planning sort of process. And then we'll have a Danielle, one of our leading library sort of interior suppliers in the UK, to talk at a very special topics around health and well-being in libraries. And then we have Mr. Bashir to talk in terms of library sort of design across there. And then we'll open it up for sort of discussion and questions. And I'm absolutely delighted. We've got over 200 colleagues all around the MEA region here. So we'll try and make sure we speak slowly, because for many of you this will be your second language, and we'll try and keep our presentations brief so we have plenty of opportunity for questions and discussions and so dialogue. Does that make sense to everyone? Does that seem reasonable?
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. But I have an announcement, that two announcements, by the way. The first one we'll have in the Arabic channel, that interpretation in Arabic, so they can switch to this one. So everyone can just feel free just to have the flow of knowledge. The second one, we will receive the question written in the question and answer down there during this one. At the end, during the roundtable discussion, so we can answer all the questions with this engaging vibe. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to share the screen, and if I can share the entire screen, share, and I need somebody to shout out and say that they can see the screen. Can somebody see the first screen?
Yep, I can.
Okay, oh, perfect. Great. So a little bit about sort of me across that, but the main thing, what I would urge you all to do is please do go on the website, and I will put it in the chat, or my colleague Nick Cave can, is Designing Libraries website. It's a free portal for you to have everything to do with any aspect of library sort of design sort of across there. So please do have a look at some point in time to library design. A lot of what we share will also be available on the website, so we won't need to do that. So the first thing is that what are the key drivers for new libraries? So all around the world, there is a resurgence of new libraries, and they're about urban regeneration. We're living in a knowledge economy now. Everything's about information. We need to understand what fake news is, how we get the best information. There's a big focus, particularly around the global majority world, around education and sort of learning. Communities want to develop civic pride, and libraries are really part of that sort of growth in civic pride and a place where we are. There's growing in terms of technology and digital, and libraries are really at the forefront of this. So rather than, technology taking over what libraries do, libraries have embraced technology and developed such things and maker spaces there. Culture, creativity, community hubs, reskilling populations, and the visitor economy have all basically been drivers for new libraries around the world. These are some of the trends that I've sort of discovered in terms of library sort of design, in terms of working with colleagues right across the globe and as part of designing libraries. Now, what I'm hoping to do is in the next sort of 15 minutes or so, explore some of these sort of themes around library sort of design. The first area is around collaboration and creative spaces. The library as a place for literature is familiar through writing events, writers' events, authors' visits, book clubs, literature festivals. In addition, the library is a place for music, theatre, cinema, community performance is increasingly familiar in many libraries. So there are lots of event spaces that are designed in new libraries. And here's an example in Dock 1 in Denmark, which really shows how the library is sort of designed for those culture and creative spaces. The library as a place for literature, and you can see here the culture and community space. This is a Helsinki and the Oud Library. Again, you can see how it offers cafes, restaurants, cinema, a whole range of sort of learning labs and studios. So the role of the library has increased in its sort of role and function. Books and reading remain at the heart of what libraries do, but they do much more sort of now. Some library, obviously green spaces and sustainability are really a key trend in sort of libraries. Some examples of green spaces here and resilient spaces. For example, you can see here green roofs, solar panels, rainwater harvesting and disaster preparation plans. Here I'm showing two libraries which sort of exemplify great sustainable sort of design. Isra in Saudi Arabia, you can see, look how it's underground features work, and it's NYU in Abu Dhabi, you can see in terms of energy sort of consumption. So lots of design around ensuring that libraries are a place where when it's very hot, they become cooling centres, and like it is now in the UK, many of our libraries are what's called warm hubs, places where people can come. But sustainability and in the design is very, very important, and there's a trend of libraries exemplifying that sort of here. Digital technology and hybrid technology, the use of interactive digital display in the library for efficient, clean, stylish and sort of effective areas. You can see there's sort of maker spaces here. You can see how technology has become part of the furniture in many libraries. It's part of the experience. So whether it's sort of digital on your phone library, but also linking back to the physical sort of library here, that's been sort of quite a shape there. reconfiguring layouts to make them sort of various areas more physically accessible helps to engage users and promote safety, which is also increasingly important today in libraries, taking advantage of that. So really what we found is traditional libraries in very boxed room, the reading room, the stacks, this place, lots of different rooms. But now what you'll find is open plan libraries, and you can see which are more flexible in terms of moving that, but also the sight lines are much more sort of clearer. And what at the bottom is Missouri Public Library in the United States, which was announced as Library of the Year of IFLA in 2022. And the design to blend in some sort of mountain and surrounding really is winning. So in fact, I think if you can see, all these libraries have a big feature out windows looking out. Generally, traditional libraries had all the books round where the windows were and the readers in the middle, but it's flipped during the century, where now all the readers want to look out to the views, natural light, and maybe some of the books are kept inside. Another feature in today's libraries are sort of laid out in terms of sort of different sort of zones and child focus. Often libraries were often really not welcoming necessarily sort of for children, and now libraries, particularly sort of public libraries, are really focusing on different zones, particularly around sort of learning, and children are priority users in many sort of countries, and the library is there because children are the future library adult users, and the skill of reading is fundamental to any sort of academic success. So you can see more and more effort has been to try and encourage people to use a library. That's me in Dubai, a library, and it's basically like a halfway between a sort of playroom and a library and a playground. So that has been something that's been sort of quite interesting in there. The other areas around flexible furniture and adaptable sort of spaces, a flexible approach in terms of structure, e.g. columns and sort of demountable sort of walls, adaptable in terms of furniture, in terms of zoning, and neutral sort of decor, not necessarily gender age specific, and responsive sort of for proactive things. So what we do know is we need to change the space for different uses, and we need to change it sort of quite often. So more and more it's really adaptable spaces, but also adaptable sort of furniture, which maybe Danielle might talk about in a short time. The other trend of a come across is that libraries are sort of mimicking retail. What sort of has changed is that the use of space, libraries are no longer just functional spaces. The focus nowadays is on customer experience. Modern libraries are more akin to retail environment like shops. They want to keep customers coming back. They are, after all, competing with other leisure attractions and other areas. So you can see here some examples of how libraries are sort of trying to get that bit of retail space and trying to sort of encourage users to come with sometimes like cathedral-like spaces. It's a former post office, the first picture there in the Netherlands, and you can see how beautiful some of these designs are. The other area is around social spaces and events. Public libraries, particularly nowadays, have adapted and reinvented themselves to changing needs and preferences of their users, and they continue to do so. Books and remaining central, but really here you can see how initial sort of designs around people wanting libraries for events. Traditionally, 75% of a library space has been occupied by books and resources, and now as more and more journals and information reference books become online, it's flipped itself now, where 75% of a library space is for events and activities, and perhaps only 25% for physical sort of books. So that's something that's changed, particularly during sort of my sort of career there. Today's libraries are sort of laid out differently in sort of different zones, such as quiet study, social, learning spaces, each focusing on needs of sort of different users. And here I've got an example of how library in Houston has sort of divided a library around social study and sort of silent spaces. So the library now is no longer fully silent. So there'll be places where you can go for silent, but it's more about what you want to do in different places, and you need to sort of manage that. So that's been something of a trend that I've been sort of seeing across then all different spaces. Open access is another important trend, using technology to offer 24 access to library spaces. It's all about convenience in a positive customer experience. Libraries have now become the third space, somewhere between home, work, school, or a combination of three. And here you can see there's a little sleep pod sort of there across there, where students can sort of have a 20-minute sort of break and sort of sleep there. And the library is open sort of 24 hours with open access of technology. So that's something very sort of different. Outdoor space, very important. This is Library of Birmingham. I was principal project officer for this new library, the biggest cultural project in Europe at the last century. And you can see how important the outdoor was. It has 3 or 4 gardens across the library, where traditionally we probably hadn't seen the library where you'd really focus outdoors, but there is really a bit of a focus outdoors. But also, how the library looks at night is becoming a bit more focused. It's about, libraries being symbols lit up for certain areas. So you could see basically that's the Library of Birmingham at night across there, and it's Qatar National sort of Library. So whenever events happen or significant issues, the library will be lit up in particular colours. Often in the past, really much thought hadn't really been in terms of the exterior and at night. People say, well, libraries aren't really used, but they were really quite sort of symbols of that area. So that's something that really more and more people are thinking about. Visibility and connectivity. I have mentioned sort of some of this around sort of navigation, having low shelving so that it looks open and airy, clear circulation lines, simple sort of layout, effective sort of lighting. So really visibility and connectivity is very important, and designs trends show many libraries are going around these different sort of spheres of way that books are there. Accessibility inclusion is so important, and it's about ensuring that the library is in the right place near the high streets where people can get to it. Public transport are there, often co-located with other sort of services there near the one front. So actually more and more now people say, how do people get to the library? It's not a case you will build and people will come. In order to get people using libraries, you really need to make sure that they are in accessible places to sort of go there. And community use has also been quite important in libraries, that now they're used for a variety of functions. Here in Slough, the library is also a museum, a gallery, a registration office for birth, marriages, sort of death, adult education centres, lots of community sort of use across that, and that's a growing trend, particularly in the UK there. And it hasn't grown, but basically I'm seeing 3 or 4 new sort of libraries that are really sort of combining libraries in terms of dual use. So there'll be dual use, maybe dual use for different sort of types of education, particularly around school libraries and public libraries are dual use. But this is the first in the UK dual-use library, which is both a university and a public library. It's called the Hive in Worcestershire. So you can see basically university students and libraries. It's just one library, public can use it, university students, and it is a really successful case of how that can be done. Another area around trends is finding libraries as co-working spaces, so that, you know, that thing about work and space, since the pandemic, more and more people now are going to the library as a place where they have, as part of their business, their workspace, in order to do that, because you can do so much on your sort of computer, and they are being sort of integrated as sort of business centres, co-location space for people to sort of run their businesses out of, and that's sort of encouraged there. And here's some examples of some of the libraries that do that. As you see, the trends are, we have home, we have education, work, and libraries. And really, the libraries now are, in terms of trends, that third space. It's combining a bit of that home, a library in your living room type there. Part of it's education and how you learn, the workspaces at work and libraries. And we're combining all these different areas in terms of that design, that third space that you go to. It's not your home, but it's not your sort of library sort of here. Here's a picture of me in Abu Dhabi, and libraries are also symbols of, in terms of symbols of, you know, somebody wants a showcasing an area, and more library design is really around these sort of book walls. Can you see this one? I thought I went there. So it's not very practical if you want the book right at the top, but there is a bit of a trend of going back traditional size, having these book walls. Often they're for furniture or for aesthetic design, as opposed to functioning sort of libraries there. These are some of the books that the Dr. Abdullah mentioned earlier on, the Metric Handbook, Better by Design, a new one, revision around some of the resources available sort of across there. And if you get all these slides, a lot of the details sort of have come out from some of these sort of references. So like a good librarian, I have tried to reference it. And finally, don't forget one last thing before sort of questions, which will come later, in terms of the library is never finished. It's always sort of refreshing itself and being sort of redesigned. So that's me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ayub. You always surprise me with different angle of looking at the library design. So thank you again, and you can introduce the next.
Okay. So yes. So next is sort of Karen Latimer. I've known Karen for many years, and we are very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have Karen, who's agreed to participate in this workshop, because her time is very precious, and lots of people are asking Karen to do many things. She has a very long history with number of sort of libraries that she's personally sort of led on, but also she was the chair of the IFLA Libraries Buildings Committee, and has written a number of books on library sort of design, and particularly green libraries. In fact, if there was an expert in library buildings,
Stop.
Think about Karen across that. So without embarrassing sort of Karen too much, I'll put up the slides.
Thank you.
Slides there. So share slides.
Thanks.
And anything else I want to say about? Do you want to say anything else?
No. I think you've said more than enough. It's a huge pleasure to be here with everybody today. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you to all the attendees for coming along. If you put up the first slide, Ayub, I can.
Yeah. So I've put it up. Can you all see it?
No.
Oh, okay.
I can't see it. I can probably share it myself. But...
So I haven't shared my screen. So what I'll do is let me share my screen. Oh, yeah.
Share your screen.
Yeah, I've shared my screen. So you'll see it in 1 minute now.
That's great. That's great.
It's coming. It's coming, yes.
Okay.
That's super. I think I can. Yeah. That's super. Thanks, Ayub. I think I can probably change the slides myself, so don't worry about that. I'll do that. Thank you for the very fulsome introduction. As Ayub said, I have a background in both architecture and librarianship, and as Ayub said, been chair of IFLA Library Buildings Group and the LIBER Library Architecture Group. That's the European Research Libraries. But enough about me, as I say, Ayub has said more than enough. My role today is to talk to you about the process, really, of planning libraries. Now, I know for many people listening, they will think, well, I'm not likely to be designing a huge new library. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, who knows? But all of us, I think, who work in libraries, at some point deal with space configuration, whether it's a small space or a large one. And I hope what I am going to say is relevant regardless of the size of the project that you're dealing with. So I'm going to see if I can, no, I think you're going to have to do the slide changing. I'll see if it'll.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can change.
Okay, you change the next one then. I thought I could just hit enter, but I think as you put it up. So what I want to talk about are the key stages in preparing for a library project. So the first stage is writing and developing the brief, and then you move on after that to the business of getting closer to it opening. The first phase can go on for quite a long time. Moving in is the third phase. I am not going to really discuss that today because frankly, the best way to do that is to find a really good experienced firm that do this day in, day out, and they move you in. And it tends to happen more at an institutional level rather than the librarianship one. And then I shall finish off by a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is post-occupancy evaluation. Looking at your building, it's hard to do, but it is so helpful in terms of moving on to looking at new spaces. So those are the 4 stages that I want to look at. And if you can bring up the next slide, Ayub. So let's look at the first phase, which is writing the brief, the program, whatever word you want to use, but trying to get across what kind of building you as the library leader wants to achieve. This is you talking in dialogue with your architect. And I always keep saying the best buildings are where architects and librarians work well and closely together. So I think the most important, as the library leaders or the senior management team, they will lead the process, but everybody should be involved. The staff and the users, of course. Not only does that bring new perspectives, precisely what we're doing here today, getting other people's ideas in the discussion later, but get everybody involved, and it also makes them feel more part of the whole process. And people, my colleagues in the libraries, and I have worked in academic libraries for many, many years, sometimes they'll say, oh, you know, you're really interested in buildings, but we are interested in the library service. And I keep saying to them, the two are inseparable. If you have good spaces, you can then provide a really good service. If you have a poor space, badly designed space, this limits the kind of service you can do. So they are interlinked in every way. And I wanted to mention the vision, you know, the vision you have. Vision is a word in English that is used perhaps too much, and we switch off sometimes, but it is terribly important to have a clear idea, vision, call it what you will. And it's very important that your idea for your library aligns with your institution. We all work in very different libraries and institutions with different needs. So if you are trying to formulate an idea for a building, make sure that it ties in with the kind of institution that you are. And Professor Abdullah started off by talking about what this institution is about. And we all need to have an idea. What is our institution about? How do we design a library to fit that? And then you communicate that idea. Next slide, please, Ayub. So I wanted just to show you a few, and just to show you that as Ayub has already said in talking about trends, different libraries will want different things. So I've just picked 3 that I have been involved with over the years. So this is the Royal College of Surgeons Library in Dublin, and their vision for their new library, which incidentally I'm doing a post-occupancy evaluation of at the moment, they wanted a vibrant learning space. They wanted lots of choice. They wanted a range so that you could have individual study or groups working together, formal or informal. And they were very focused on what they're very specific. This is a medical library, really. This is all sorts of aspects of medicine. So they were very, keen that they knew what their users wanted, and with many users with different needs. But interestingly, the last thing they said on their brief was get the basics right. And that is so important. We can have this wonderful vision, but you want it to work. You want the Wi-Fi to work, the lighting to be good, etc. And the next slide, we just have a look at it. That's what they came up with. And we talked at the beginning about digital information. This was one of the first libraries I looked at that I thought really produced a very beautiful learning space with very few books at all, because in medicine it's nearly all online. And sometimes they can look rather soulless, but this was very successful. So in the next one, please, Ayub. Quite a different approach to writing a brief was the National Library in Latvia, which was much more in the mind, if you want. So they wanted to get across this symbol, if you want. They wanted it to be a mythical palace, so it was a metaphor for knowledge and freedom. And the architect, who was an American architect, but born in Latvia, Gunnar Burkerts, he wanted to kind of play on a folk story in Latvia about the glass mountain and how hard it was to get to the top. And also architecturally, he wanted it to have a feel of Latvian barns. So show me the next slide, Ayub, and we'll see whether he succeeded. So that's so a very different approach, if you like, to writing your brief. And one more, please. Next slide, Ayub. Then this library is quite old now, but the University of Leicester had a library that was not working very well, an academic library, and they wanted to extend it. And they wrote a very specific brief. Now, I've cut these down, obviously, from the whole document. They wanted it to be welcoming, but they also wanted it to send the message that this was a scholarly place. They wanted to be somewhere that students could be in for long periods. Perhaps, again, this is an academic versus public to some extent, that in a public library, you might drop in for a little while. In academic, you might be there for longer. So they wanted it to be comfortable, if you like. And again, they wanted silent spaces and social spaces. They wanted broad, open plan areas and some little corners that people could hide away in. They were very keen that people behaved well. So they wanted, the staff were able to have good oversight. It was easy to use. And this is picking up on what Ayub has already said about trends, lots of natural light, and they wanted it to be sustainable. So we'll just have a look at it. It's not a great photo. Next slide. So that's it. So next slide, please, Ayub. Oh, yes, and I couldn't resist. I couldn't find the brief for this, and I promise you I had it. But this is a library outside Beijing, and they wanted, it's made of bamboo, and they wanted it to be highly sustainable and to blend into the landscape. And I just thought it was such a successful picture, I would show it to you. So next slide. Okay, so you've done your kind of broad outline brief, and now you're, getting down more to the detail, if you like. And the things you need to think about at this stage then is you identify your users and what they need. And the next one is very important. Look at what's good about your service and what's not so good. And what are you not doing at all that maybe you should be doing, and see how that can be folded into your plan. When you're planning a library, you're obviously using a lot of data that you already have. This is how many users we have and how many loans we have. But you also have to try and project into the future, which is the really difficult bit. So it's trying to get envisage what it's going to be like in 10 or 20 years. And you do that, obviously, by asking your users. And my last point, don't forget staff spaces. In my long career. It used to be that librarians were very, well, you know, it's all about the user and we don't matter. But I think now people realize if you're going to provide a good service, you want your staff to have good workspaces and be comfortable and happy too. And now that is folded in very much into new plans. Next one, please, Ayub. One of the libraries that I have got lots of favorites and they change every time anybody asks me, but I was very impressed. Ayub showed you the public library in Utrecht, and this is the academic library. And I interviewed students here and they all loved their library. And when I asked their director, how did you manage to come to this successful conclusion? He said, I had dinner with the architect every week. So there you are. That's another approach to working with your architect. Next slide. Oh, and I mentioned staff spaces. This isn't a great slide, but I tell you, if you want to look at good staff spaces, go to Scandinavia. They really seem to care about their staff. And this was the National Library in Sweden, which, you know, I just thought when I went into it was just a really comfortable place to come and have a break from work. So staff spaces. Next slide, Ayub. Now, Ayub has touched on this as well, so I'll do it quite quickly. But at an IFLA Library Buildings conference or seminar in the late 90s, a British architect called Faulkner Brown came up with what he considered were the key good qualities of library space. Since then, people like Andrew MacDonald and Ayub Khan, who you've just heard from, and me to some extent, have kind of developed them. But I still think it's a very good list to have in front of you, very similar to Ayub's. So quickly going through, libraries have to be functional. They need to be able to change because needs change, easy to use, plenty of choice, interactives and interesting, you know, make sure that your users and your staff can communicate with each other well. You want it to be motivating and inspiring. And then on the other side, the practically slightly more practical bit, it must work, you know, be not too hot, not too cold, etc. Safe and secure, very important. Again, from your bosses, your library bosses, if you like, the institution, not expensive to run, and of course, in today's world, IT rich, you know, lots of provision, sustainable on the wow factor we've mentioned. So next slide, Ayub. So what are the challenges at this first stage? And I think the main challenges are balancing, as I've already mentioned, the information you have about how your library's used, but looking ahead to how it might be used. That is a challenge and it's difficult to do. Also balancing a very functional building, but you also want it to be a wow factor building as well. And capturing the sense of what your institution is difficult because lots of people have different ideas, but how you capturing that is another challenge. And as I've said, you can't just take a blueprint. You need to know what will fit your users. And I think, and again, Prof. Abdullah mentioned this at the beginning, I think we could do lots more in finding out how spaces and information technology influence the way we learn and what do good digital spaces look like, because that's increasingly where we're going. Next one, Ayub, please. And you've already shown some of the James Hunt in North Carolina. It was a very good example, if you like, of a digital library. They were very keen to be a sort of bookless library. Next one. This is just quick images. The University of Helsinki, I put it up because I thought they did great work with their users. And it's a much more bookish space, but again, a very successful library. Next one. Just skip through then. And there are lots of examples, and many of them you will know. The Black Diamond at the top in Copenhagen, Public Library in Amsterdam, and one in England below. So next slide. And this is, I put this in, I do a lot of work in architectural conservation. And this is the the new Bodleian Library in Oxford, which used to be, people never really visited it. And they decided to restore it and open it. They talked about closing it down, but they reopened it. And if you show the next slide, Ayub, I think they did a very good, they kept the kind of scholarly, because they want to attract high quality scholars to Oxford, but they also made it somewhere where the ordinary members of the public enjoy working. So it's a very sustainable project. Next one, Ayub. So off into the second phase. you've done all the kind of thinking, and now you're getting down to the nitty gritty. So as the library people involved in the planning, hold true to your vision. That can be difficult because people try and chip away at it. Keep communicating with your users and your staff and your stakeholders. At this stage, you're going to be making decision after decision after decision. And at the beginning, the first phase, for example, my institution here has said to me they want to build a new medical library, but it won't open until about 2040, but they're already starting to think about it. So it can be a long time. And then when you get to the second phase, it suddenly speeds up. And you need to think about time and money, obviously, versus doing new things. Next slide, Ayub. I just say plans. If you've never looked at plans, I would advise you to learn a bit about them if you're going to be involved in any kind of space planning. This is just preliminary plans, but do make sure you understand how they work. Walk around your current building with the existing plans if you want, or virtually walk around the new one. But ask your architect questions, and once you get to the construction documents, there's no way any of us are going to follow those. So this is the time, the very initial plans, to make sure you understand them. Next slide, please, Ayub. Next slide. Thank you. Also, so now we're moving close to opening time. And the key thing about this is you're just making decisions all the time and thinking about, do you want service points at all, or is it all self-service? Where are they going to go if you want them? What are you lending? What are you not? And I love art, and good signage is very important, and good art in buildings is lovely. So this is the time to perhaps do those softer side of things, the art, not the signage, which is essential. And then, as I said before, plan the move, but I think that's mainly institution-led. So next slide, Ayub. And the challenges then at the second phase, really, as you're getting closer to opening, is just this endless decision making. Be prepared for that. Pick your battles. Some things you're going to have to just let go because suddenly there isn't enough money or something's not available. A lot of troubleshooting at this stage. And I always say at the end, everybody's always exhausted as they get to the end of a building thing, but we hope it's followed by, a really successful building and great joy. Next slide. My last bit then to finish off is I wanted to touch on post-occupancy evaluation. I do think it's very important if you're in a library or if you've done some work on a space in a library to look at it maybe a year later or 2 or 3 years later. The one I'm about to do in Dublin is, I think, 6 years since they opened. So you're asking them, did it work for the users? Did it work for you, the staff? Interestingly, does the finished building meet what you originally set out with as your vision and your brief? Have you got the right spaces? Have you got enough of them, or maybe sometimes too many of them? Sometimes you get that wrong. Very importantly, adjacency is a word that is used a lot in library planning. Are your noisy areas far enough away from your silent areas? Are your book delivery areas near your customer service or whatever? Get the positioning right. Is it easy to find your way around, and can you change it? Because you will have to. Next slide, please. I always quote Delft Technical University. They seem to be very fleet of foot. They have done so many changes. And I talked to their architect, who did Ayub will know her, Francine Hubin of Meccano. She was a graduate of this university. And when she was asked to design the library, she envisaged a very traditional library. Prof. Abdullah will like it, a library. But that it was the library director who sat down and said, no, this is a technical university. Now, this was in the late 90s, so this was 25 years ago. We don't want a lot of books. We want a really, really good digital library. Next slide, Ayub. There's plenty of tools for post-occupancy evaluation. The IFLA library buildings have prepared a questionnaire. It's too long, and I can say that because I wrote it up, and I think Ayub, you probably helped as well. But you can just pick and choose the questions you want. See how your users use your building, your new building, do some surveys, talk to the staff. And I think it's always quite good to go back and maybe get a consultant. It's sometimes quite good not to do it yourself. Get somebody to go back and look, this is what we asked for. How did it work? The next slide, and I think we're on the last ones now. Yes, that's just the book that we did on that. Next slide. And that's the evaluation questionnaire, which is online. It's on the website. You can get it anyway. Next slide. And the challenges then for this phase is people tend to not think they haven't got time. You know, it's a pain really. You know, they've built their building and they don't really want to do it. And also you'll find very often people are frightened that if you ask how it works and somebody comes back and says, well, it doesn't work at all, that this is not going to be good, you know, and people have spent a lot of money on it. But I think you need to be brave and do it. And librarians, we're good at measuring things, but point 3, what you're really looking at nowadays is outcomes. What is the quality of your service? Is it improving learning? Is there a community benefit? You know, and I think this is where looking at, you know, there's a lot of research can be done there. You want to show the money, the people who control the money, that better space enables better service, better learning, and better experience. Next slide, please, Ayub. I think we're just, oh, the deadly sins. This is an American librarian called Fred Schlip, who always writes very funny articles. You know, watch out for the library's in the wrong place, the lighting's awful, it's inflexible, it's noisy. So watch out for the deadly sins. Next slide. And I'm just finishing now, just because I think it's a nice quote. A library I've just visited very recently is Magdalen College, Cambridge, which is designed by an Irish architect. And it's Cambridge, obviously a very academic institution. And he said, I thought this nice quote, on a starry night, this warmer glow meets the eyes of those emerging from dinner, Cambridge College, of course, as a lure to scholarship. But I think, you know, if your library's luring you to scholarship, that's a good thing. I think that's the last slide, isn't it? Oh, no, there's one last slide. Oh, that's the interior. Wonderful, high quality. That's my other point. If you can afford it, go for high quality. It really tells. And now your last slide. Next one, Ayub, last slide. There you go. I leave you on that. So I leave you now and we can head on to the next speaker. Thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Yeah. Carol, thank you so much again. That was sort of wonderful. And to see all those marvellous pictures, you're really taking us all around the globe with those libraries. In terms, I'd love to do a tour of all those libraries sort of one day.
Yeah, well, we'll do it.
You could be our tour guide to those things there. Great. So without sort of further to do, and in fact our participation numbers have gone up, so we haven't put anybody off at the moment. We've got 236 people already, and there's something like about 68 comments in the chat, which I'll be sort of looking through in a moment. So I think, Danielle, you are next speaker to speak. Danielle is a very well-known designer, library interior designer in the UK, and is sort of managing sort of director of and chief executive of Design Concept, and based in Glasgow, and is very, very sort of particularly around sort of colours and design is amazing. So looking forward to hearing from Danielle. Danielle, do you want to put your presentation up and say anything else that I might have missed?
No problem. Thank you very much. So I hope you can all see that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we can see. Yeah.
I think I'll have to do it this way. Sorry, the things at the side are. Yeah. So I've put up a slide here that tells you a little bit about us, very briefly. As Ayub says, I'm passionate about library design. I've been involved in it for over 30 years now, more years than I care to own up to, but it's a particular passion for me. There's nothing that gives me more pleasure than going into a public space, seeing people use it and knowing that you've had some involvement in it. So I'm part of a very large group of companies. As Ayub said, our office in the UK is called the Design Concept, but we're part of the LabHelps group, who have roots all over and have been really active in designing libraries since 1929. And we go by the slogan, we are library people, and we're very proud to call ourselves library people. So this is just a couple of just showing you some inspirational projects that I've had the pleasure of being involved in. Ayub talked about this one a little bit earlier. It's the Mohammed bin Rashid Library in Dubai, and it was particularly close to my heart because it took a lot out of me getting involved in this project, but it's something that we're very, very proud of. And you can see the ode to the book walls that Ayub was mentioning as well. There's huge walls in this library that are about 15 meters wide by about 7.5 meters high, and there are 4 of these walls. So again, just some inspirational projects to show you that we've been involved in the UK. So just ideas of what we do. And you can see from these slides, I touched on the fact that I'm particularly keen on colour. You'll see a lot of vibrancy and a lot of colours, and I just think colour brings a space to life. So a lot of the slides I show you will be full of colour. Those are just some inspirational children's spaces to show you. Children's spaces don't have to be twee, and when you use a theme in a children's space, you need to think of something that's going to give it the longevity, and it's not going to tire after a while. So these are just some ideas of nautical themes in different children's libraries. So what I wanted to touch on today particularly was the design considerations that we think about when we're designing today's library. So we're obviously looking at balancing digital technology with library physical spaces. We look keenly on the flexibility of use. Sustainability is really key to us, but you'll see that I've highlighted 2 topics that are fairly new trends, but trends that have been embraced, I suppose, globally in public spaces and are becoming more and more pertinent to our lives, particularly since the COVID era. I suppose these things are all pertinent to us. So I've shown you some examples of designing for a digital world, and how, we can include things like technology into end panels in amongst our shelving, how furniture needs to have plug-in points for the users to bring their own devices, and a lot of furniture today will have built-in plug points. On the top picture, you'll see like listening pods for people to go into. So technology is wholly embraced into the libraries that we design, and it's also a new way to display collections with touchscreens, and that's, the data and images of the collections can roll on these screens as well. Okay, I've put in here flexibility is the key, and we talked about flexibility earlier, but what today's libraries is a little bit more than just repositories of books. They're becoming real community hubs for people who engage in this space. So it's really important how you're able to take a space, change it from just a typical library environment to something that can be used for other activities as well. So this is a library, for example, that we designed in Darlington. The top image shows you the children's library as it is on a day-to-day basis. And for this library, we were particularly grateful to get permission from Charlie Mackesy, the author, to put a lot of his images on graphics around the library space as well to bring it to life. In the bottom of the library, you see that it's almost like a performance stage for children to sit and do book bug events, that sort of thing. But it also changes, so all the furniture in the middle of the space is absolutely flexible, and it gets changed on a regular basis. So you can see from here they can do it in a theatre style setup where they do concerts. They've had silent discos in the space. They do author events. So it's really about making sure that when you design library spaces, you make sure that there's spaces that you built in that will allow this flexibility for it to be used in so many different ways. You touched on sustainability, and this is, I suppose, because of the company or the group's Scandinavian roots, we're really keen on making sure that we take sustainability to another level. So we make sure that a large proportion of the products that we use have, for example, FSC certification or have eco labels on that show, you know, that we think about how we're using this, and we're thinking about really a sustainable planet. So in doing so, we focus on providing interior solutions that minimize our environmental impact as well. So we'll use stuff that can either be reused, that have you know, components that can be reused in different forms again. So that's quite important to us. But what is becoming more and more key is that when we do today's library designs, we try to see where, if possible, we can reuse existing elements and projects or products so that we can upcycle them and again show that the sustainability credentials that we strive for. And, you know, library shelving is built to last. You get particular shelving that's suitable for libraries for a reason, because they're built to last. So very often there's no need to replace all of the shelving. You can simply pretty it up by putting on different end panels, graphics, cladding it in a different way, changing the layout of the library. So it's not always about getting new. It's about taking the value that you have, or the money that you've got, and spend it in the best way possible to give the library a new vision of life. And obviously I'm talking about refurbishments when I talk about this. So if I start on now on Biophilic Design and what that's all about. So we say that we all have this tendency in us to be closely associated to nature. There's nothing more calming than bringing nature into a space. We feel at best relaxed and calm when we're out in nature. And what we try to do is bring that, it's about bringing that element of nature into your library spaces, and just giving people safe havens. But Biophilic Design is not just about bringing plants or greenery into the space. It's about, and both Ayub and Karen touched on that, light is so essential. So the right kind of light flooding into spaces is equally as important. And, you know, we use a lot of graphics as well to kind of show that sort of biophilic environment within the library spaces as well. So it's about embracing nature with the use of natural lights, plants, and natural material forms. So because we're limited on time, I've put on here, we've actually, this is so dear to our hearts that we've produced a whole lot of articles which can be found on our website, specifically on biophilic design. And we've produced sub-articles that tell you about, show you or showcase biophilic projects. We can showcase biophilic products for use in these spaces. There's some nature-inspired graphics that I was talking about to show you. There's also a lot of libraries that show where we've embraced, or the architects have embraced, natural light that's needed in these spaces. There's natural inspired materials and patterns that are being used. So there's a link to this as well. Nature inspired sounds, and also the scent of nature as well, and touching nature. And just in fact, how biophilic design impacts on the environment. So there are links that can be found to all of these articles, and they are really quite in depth and very well written. something that's really a new trend, I would say, and people are becoming so aware of, and it's probably our next thing that we're becoming passionate about, and trying to see how libraries can help with mental health and well-being. And it's not a secret that 1 in every 8 people in the world live with a mental disorder. And mental disorders are among the top 10 leading causes of health loss worldwide. And don't just take my word for it. These are actual studies that we've taken this information from. So bad environments, what does that mean? It estimates that we spend up to about 90% of our times indoors. And so it's important that we respond to the different elements that can give people and contribute to sensory overload, like audible sounds, which are sort of intermittent or continuous noises from loud or indeed to very quiet areas, particularly when unexpected. Visual noise can be created by lighting, by colors that are used, by patterns that are used, technology or clutter, and obviously unwanted sensory feedback as well, so through smell, touch and taste. So this is a survey that was done in the UK, a British health survey, and it reveals how a significant majority of people believe or have reacted to questions that we've asked about what a crucial role libraries could play or could play in the support of mental health. So you'll see here, for example, that health and well-being services offered by the library are not advertised enough. 83% have said that, and a lot of libraries offer these facilities, but patrons don't know about it. Visiting the library can improve my mental health and well-being. 75% of people agreed with that. Libraries help me learn about healthy eating options. Again, a good percentage agreed with that. Libraries, as you would obviously expect, are good places for trusted information and gaining knowledge or skills, and I'm pleased to say that over 90% of people agreed with that. Libraries help me access digital services, 64%, and I enjoy visiting libraries to take part in clubs, so groups, meetings, book bugs, 44% agreed in that. Using the library service can help people who may be feeling isolated and lonely. And I think that figure is an incredible figure, and the one that struck me the most, that really libraries are so much more, as I say, than just book repositories. They're for people to actually come and meet other folk, to engage in different activities, and to stop loneliness as well. So visiting the library helps me get out of the house, get advice, and feel connected. Again, a good percentage of people felt that way. So I've put here, how can libraries support mental health? So obviously we can assist with creating warm, welcoming spaces with comfortable seating, safe private spaces so that people can find their own zones to feel comfortable within the library space. Embracing daylight, integration of plants, we can help with this, but equally as important as the furniture that goes into the space to facilitate that are the resources that the libraries offer. So mental health resource books, the selection of books, audio books, online courses and digital resources that focus on mental health topics are really key. You can hold workshops and seminars, offer regular mindfulness and meditation and yoga sessions, and also staff training. Ensure that the library staff receive appropriate training on mental health awareness and how to support patrons in need. So again, just as the biophilic examples I showed you of the articles, this is, as I say, the next area that we're really embracing and are looking at in its entirety. So we're looking at creating a series of digital articles on our website as well that will consist of a main page, a pillar page on mental health, but there'll be several sub-articles as well that will embrace, will showcase, I should say, how quiet zones, help with mental health, that relaxed design helps with this, creating rooms within a space helps with this, community activities, which is where the librarians come into play, access to guidance and resources, healthy workplace, and dementia-friendly design. So again, these will be sub-articles, but they'll be quite in-depth and they've all been really well researched. So on reflection, I wanted to just say that our aim now is to design libraries that support better mental health. We want to reduce the potential for sensory overload or distress by introducing sensory relaxing elements into libraries, and that's becoming really prevalent. We want to support natural inspired environments by incorporating nature inspired elements and furniture. So you can see in the picture that I've got in the left here, a little hidey hole that you can create amongst your bookstock for a person just to go and find a little bit of a quiet haven. But we've again brought in nature with the graphics that are quite strong and key, that just encourages that feel of bringing the outside in. And also very key to us is offer places for social meetings, group work, workshops, when needing, proving furniture that supports activities, presentation, and social gathering. And lastly, if you're interested, we've also worked with AI. We've got some AI-generated hosts from an IDA. We've got 3 podcasts that we produced on biophilic design that, again, you might find quite interesting. Okay, that's me.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. If you could stop sharing your screen, that would be good. I've never seen so many love presented to a presentation. Hearts were going on the screens like no one's business. So it sounded as if your presentation resonated with lots of people on the call. Thank you for that. And I also like the idea around upcycling furniture. It's not just good for the pocket and our money, but also good for the environment, about reusing furniture. So that was a really good takeaway from me. Now, before we open up for questions and discussion, the final speaker of the day, I'd like to invite onto you. Perhaps you could basically introduce yourself.
Yes, yes, thank you very much. Bashir Swede, I'm architect and space planner. So I will take you back to the first phase presented by Karen. She presented all the process, and I will focus on the first phase to give you the point of view of the space planner of the public libraries. I can share my presentation.
Perfect. Yeah, your presentation is up. So yes, we can see it all very clearly.
It's clear for you?
Yes, clear for us all.
Yeah. Yes. So as I introduced it, I will try to share with you a point of view of the space planner, because it's really very important to understand that there is a gap between, and there is a sort of link also between the final result, as we say, the final result, the design, the living space with its furniture, with the visitors, with the public, before all this living space. There is a lot of work done by a lot of people also. And in the beginning, there is a space planner that worked with the staff to define what we can call the brief, what we can call the program, which will help the architect and the designers to think about the project and to design the project. And it's really a challenge, and it's really an issue to define the brief of public libraries, as the concept of the public libraries is always changing. We are going from the old concept where the libraries was just a space where we can find books and documents and we can loan, and we are going to really very, very different concepts or very different visions and very different projects through the world. From my point of view, I think that each project is unique, and we need to think for any project and for each project as a unique project related to its context, related to its audiences, related with also the staff who will work on this space, and the role of the space planner, the role of the person who is in charge of the brief, the elaboration of the brief, is to make the link and to make all these parameters together and to define the best way to respond to the question of how we will define this project, and how we can define in the brief, in the program, this project before the start and before the beginning of the work of the designer, and what we can give as a material to the designer to help him work and to help him start his work as a designer. So I took two examples to share this vision and to this question with you. But first, there is something that I can just here go very, very quickly about it. It's this process to define the project from the point of view of the space planner, or the point of view of the brief. As explained by Karen, we start with the vision, and the vision is very important. The starting point is the concept, the good definition of the objectives, the positioning of the project, and from this starting point, we can define the missions, and we need to define very precisely the missions of the project. How we can define the missions through this hearing about the audience's expectations, and studying very well the audiences and users' expectations and wishes. After that, we can define the brief. We can define it not only through the spaces or the surfaces or the tables. It's not the issue defining the spaces and the table of surfaces. What is very important is to think and to define how the project and how this library will start living, and how it will welcome its audiences, and how the audiences and the visitors will live inside these spaces. It's more and really more important than defining the spaces and the surfaces. So I want to share two examples. The first one is a creativity center in Marseille, in France. I'm based in Paris, and I work on in Paris, in France and around the world. And my job is really to work on this first phase, and my job is to define the brief and the space planning of the projects. So the Creativity Center of Marseille is a project which is inside is an academic center, but the idea is to share it with the context and to share it with the audiences coming from outside. So it's a sort of hybrid project, taking into account in the same time the expectations and the needs of the students, but in the same time it's a building that will be open to the outside public. That means it's in the same time public and academic. So I will go really very quickly through that. We worked in the same time with students, with the staff, and with the outside audiences, or the public audiences, and we made what we called here the mapping of the desires, or the mapping of the expectation of the audiences. We address this mapping through several workshops, and really it's very important to discuss and to set up this kind of workshops with the staff, with the audiences, if they exist. If they not exist, we need to work with focus groups, for example, and to make sort of this mapping of the desires. For the in the beginning, it's not really very clear. We can have this impression that it's there is a lot of things that they want to have a lot of things, but we need to dress and we need to set up this mapping, and after that it's our role as a professional, as a planner, to make this mapping in a professional way. The other idea also of in thinking on this project, what is very different from our other projects, is to not think only about the mobility or the functionality from the public point of view, but also from the project point of view. Creativity Center, but also public libraries, it's not only a space where the public or the audiences comes and share and spend time, but also it's a space, and it's a place where there is a projects, and we need to think in the same time about the functionality from the public or for the audience's point of view, but also from the project's point of view, and to think about the paths and the routes of the projects inside the building. Here, just to mention, there is we need to move in this kind of projects also from the classic way of thinking, what is very regular and very simple, and the circles are very clear, to the organization of the complexity. It's a sort of challenge. We talk about the complexity, but we need to organize this complexity. It's linked also to the flexibility in the spaces and the way of functioning in the flexibility way, etc. But the idea is to be able to anticipate this complexity, to be able to anticipate and to define what is the tools that make this complexity and this flexibility possible in the space and in the project. That's why the diagrams of this kind of projects is not a common diagrams. Usually we have just diagrams, circles, and we go through these diagrams and we go from space to space in a very simple way. When we worked on this project, it was really impossible. That's why we dressed here a sort of very complex diagram where the visitors can find several ways to practice and to go through the project, and several ways to use the different spaces. There is in sort of infinity of possibilities to use the different spaces of the project. And the challenge for the space planner is to be able and to have this capability to define this complexity and to share it with the designer and to help him to design the space which need to respond to this complexity and needs to respond to these expectations. That's why the surface or the table is not only defined by the functionalities, but also by the use, sort of combination between the functionality, the destination of the space in itself, what is here, the welcoming space, the auditorium, the Fab Lab, etc., but also by the uses and the way of using this space, what is very, very, very different and very complex. And so it's not a common way of presenting the program. It's not a common way of presenting the surfaces. The result is also to take in account through the design, take in account this complexity and the diversity of using and diversity of going through the project. The second example that I want to share with you is Franciscan. It's Deauville, in Deauville. It's a sort of very mixed space because in the beginning the project was separated in two parts. There is a library, public library, normal public library, and the other part was a museum. When we started working on the project, we with the client very quickly we have this. We are convinced that we need to mix and we need to think this project in really very different way, and to be able to put some spirit of the museum in the library and to put some spirit of the library in the museum. And this is the richness of this project, and this is really what is help us to think out of the box and really in a very different way about the project, and help us to make and to elaborate this this program and this brief in this way. So in this case, we anticipate the rhythm or the programmation of the place through the different years. That means we have in the same time exhibition spaces, we have in the same time workshops, we have very different rhythm of the project, and we need to anticipate it. And as you see here, we have 3 years to define how the place, how the project will work in the first year, the second year, and the third year. What is very regular and what is very different, and what is where is the variation in the activities of the project, and also the seasonality of the place. how it will work on the summer, how it will work in the beginning of the year, how it will work during, for example, at the end of the year, and how we can anticipate it, and what is the importance of these indications or of these parameters in the planning and in the way of designing the space. The other thing that we took in account not only the expectations of the visitors and the audiences in terms of information, what they are looking for, but we took also in consideration the context, one, and also the way of living the space and the way that we think that visitors will stay maybe 1 hour, half an hour, 1 day in the building. And so we defined not services, but what we called universe. That means atmospheres, that means a sort of exhibition inside the space, where the visitors didn't find only information, didn't find only books, but they can find a sort of complexity, in the same time books, in the same time artworks, in the same time additional information, in the same time multimedia tools, etc., in the same space, and with a sort of scenography as a museum. And we did the competition in this way. We elaborate the brief, and based it on this brief and this program, we did a competition, and we are really very surprised about the link and how there is a sort of affiliation, there is a sort of link between the brief, our way of thinking about these atmospheres and the different parts of the project, and the result in terms of design. And I just show you some images where we don't know, and it's sort of hybrid space. We don't know if we are in the museum, we are in the library, we are at home. It's a sort of very mixed atmosphere, and this is really original artworks. It's original. It's from the collection of the museum in itself. And this is really very multifunctional space. In the morning, it could be just sort of very open space for welcoming, etc. And afternoon, it's always there is always events here, mapping, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. If you stop sharing your screen, thank you, Mr. Bashir. That was very interesting around space planning, and also covered many of the themes around multi-use spaces and the importance of a space and user requirements. And I can see lots of thumbs up, claps, hearts, so it's a very well received presentation. Now I'm very sort of conscious that colleagues have been listening to a number of presentations, and it's nearly an hour and a half of sort of talking. So really it's now an opportunity for any colleagues that are online participants, if there's any comments or questions you want to present to us. There's some in the chat that we'll look at, but is there anybody that would like to sort of basically start there? And maybe Professor Dr. Abdullah, you could maybe sort of chair this part of the session.
Sure. Thank you, Ayub. And I can see that you changed those just to be free to answer the question. So this is a very interesting action from your side. Actually, during this time that of the presentation, I collect the question from different attendees, and it's really enormous number of them. I try to classify it according to the topic. So let's start with this one, and it's in Arabic. It's related to the technology and the library design. So from Miss Ilham Yahyawi, she said that, do you think that the artificial intelligence technology affected to reduce the existence of the students in the library? And on the same topic that Ms. Suad, I guess, Mr. Break, he said that within this very rapidly technology, the artificial intelligence and the other technologies like the virtual reality and augmented reality, this affect about the reading and also the calm area and the library design. How we can make this balance between both of these approaches. So please, this is an invitation for all the speakers just to jump in and give their thoughts about these two questions: artificial intelligence, library design, and also how to have this calm area within the libraries.
Okay,
yes.
so basically, who wants to basically start? I'm happy to very briefly. So in terms of I'll do the easy one first, space sort of design for different sort of users. Now, there's two ways of doing it. So one is you can design spaces for different users. So you have a deliberate place which is silent or quiet, and then you might have a deliberate space for group work. So that's quite well rehearsed. And the Hive is a very interesting example of that, where at the bottom it's quite noisy, and as you go right to the top it's absolutely silent for the students. That's one way. But another way of doing it in smaller libraries, it's time zoning. So what you might do is you might say, okay, during the morning it's busy, during sort of school time it'll be different types of noise levels. But you might say a Saturday or a Sunday might be very different. Some libraries might have music on that day on a Sunday or a Saturday in the library to create a different atmosphere. So what you can do is time zone activity. So you say it'll be busy there, but we'll make sure between 10 and 11 or 10 and 12 in the library it'll be quiet. So there's two ways of doing it: one zoning the physical spaces and users, and the other one is zoning the time when the library has different activities. Does any of the other colleagues, sort of Karen, do you want to add?
Elaborate.
I think the really difficult issue, if I've understood the question, also is the effect of AI anyway on, designing and on learning. I mean, to be honest, I think we hardly know at this point, but we're all looking at it very closely. I think AI will be a very useful tool in terms of some of the adjacencies that Bashir talked about. Some of the hard work will be done, I'm sure all of us here have used AI, and, it has huge benefits, obviously. In terms of the library staff, and perhaps not so much on design, it reminds me a bit of the early days of Google, if you like. I'm so old, when people kind of said, well, who needs that anymore? You just go and ask Google. And quickly library staff realized people need to be trained in assessing it, in judging, making value judgments. And I think that's a big challenge for AI. We need to look at it and see, what works and what doesn't. How do you evaluate what you're getting from AI? Which isn't really a design question, but I would have thought you could certainly need spaces. Let's say we have maker labs and fab labs. Let's have an AI lab where in a library where we're working with all these issues. But I think I think AI can do some of the hard work of just the data crunching for library design. I don't know if Bashir agrees, but
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I think that anyway, the public libraries is in evolution from years and years, and it's a sort of step. It's a landmark, the AIs, and that we are integrating, and we are always integrating a new technology, and so it will be a chance, and it will be a shift for another model. But I think the need of spaces, the need to share, the need to come to libraries will be always here, and we need to have libraries, but maybe we need to adapt this concept to the AI.
I agree. And I mean, it picks up on Daniela's talk about, biophilic design. And I think we have discovered that although people can work alone, looking at the academic libraries or even the public libraries, people can work alone, but they want to be together. It's that phrase they use, be together alone. Sometimes they just want to be in the same space. They might want their own private space to do something, but they want to be in a general space. Yeah. We're human beings. We like human contact.
Also, just to add to the area is that I think as technology moves on and things like AI come in, there's more and more need for libraries to have a role in terms of educating, supporting information, digital literacy. So I think what we'll be starting doing is libraries will be having lots of workshops for their customers about evaluating information, how to use it. Is this a real image? Is it a deep fake? Is it AI generated? What is real? What isn't real? And coming to the library will help you try and understand some of the issues around fake news. Digital literacy is going to be absolutely important for all societies and citizens to get used to, and libraries, which hopefully will have a key role physically for that sort of training and areas, and therefore designing spaces will be important. Danielle, do you want to add anything to that?
You're muted, Daniela.
Sorry. Yes, what I can add to that is AI is actually fascinating, and it can be taken a step further when you're talking about how it will influence the way libraries work, but also how will it influence library design per se?
Yes.
Because AI can and is available at the moment to actually do library designs, although it's in its immaturity stage. And when our designers have looked at it extensively, you still need that human interaction, but it's certainly there, and it's prevalent at the moment even. But Ayub, to take on your space about creating zones and that, again, there's so many ways that you can do that with the use of the type of furniture that you do.
Yeah.
So shelving can zone for you very effectively. Acoustic end panels can zone for you effectively, as can acoustic booth, acoustics hanging from the ceiling. So that can buffer noise in certain environments. But what it can do very effectively is create those pockets of zones as well.
Sorry, Ayub, if I could just come in, picking up on Daniela's, and I agree, AI can design your library, but I think it's back to the question, the old library question is you have to ask it the right question.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key bit, I mean, it'll turn you out to library design, but it won't necessarily do the one that your institution needs. Anyway, but who knows?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, let's try. we do need to finish at 7 o'clock, so we've just got a few minutes to do that. Let's try one of. Is there another theme of questions coming through, Dr. Abdullah? Is there something that's basically? Let's have a look at them. Yeah.
Yeah, Dafir, and this his question and others related to AI, we already covered it. There is another question from Sahar, and she said that what challenges might you face in the design or proposed model for academic library that intend to open their door to the community to be a library that combines the academic and the public library? I think we have to jump in this from a design or the building interior design to make this balance between these two type of needs. Please,
Mr. Bashir, do you want to start? Have you got any experience of this?
Yes, it's a sort of challenge in France, for example, because we tried in France for the academic library to open them to the outside or of academic people. And what is difficult is to have a sort of specific spaces or not. This is the biggest question. And what we share, what is spaces or services that academics can share with other audiences. So in my experience, we need maybe to think about that and from the beginning and to propose to the public and the audiences outside academic people. For example, link it to the welcoming space, link it to the workshops, link it to the this kind of spaces. It's easier to share and to put the people together, public audiences and academic audiences, more than the very specific documents or very specific spaces. So it's not always very easy. We cannot say that it's very easy, but we need to anticipate it from the beginning and to be able also the staff need to anticipate it also, because we don't bring the same services to students, for example, as for young people or audiences from outside.
Yeah, what's really, just to add to that, I'll put a link in the where person asked a question to the Hive. They've done it very, very well in terms of how they've integrated, but it took a long time. They have one team, and what's really interesting is that what they do is they say during the school holidays, lots of babies and children will come, but because the school students will be out of term, they'll be gone back to their homes there. So different days create different atmospheres, but that's a very good example of how they've managed to crack it, where there's just one library card, one user. And a lot of the students do like to be with the rest of the community, but they do have, the space is not that student space, that's public space. It's more about that space is for quiet study, that space is for digital. So they separate things out in terms of function rather than people. And that's sort of another interesting sort of angle. Karen, have you come across any questions like this?
I think it's a real challenge, and I think it's very telling, as you have already said, Ayub, that the Hive is really one of the very few examples. So it's not something that's caught on, I think you have to say. It's horses for courses. It says one size does not fit all. You can't do, I think, this sounds elitist and it's not meant to, but I think it doesn't work so well for the very academic libraries, to be honest. But I think Bashir has made the point. The way it works and the way I've seen it work in Oxford indeed, and in Aberdeen is exactly what he says. And Bristol, there's about to be a new academic library in Bristol that we're all waiting for. It'll be the new, it's zoning, if you like. It's having a public space at the entrance and then separating it off perhaps a bit. I don't think we've quite solved, for most libraries, it doesn't work as complete integration. So I think it is a bit of zoning, joint spaces for everybody, as I say, but it's a challenge and a very interesting question and something that is coming our way.
Yeah. Danielle, have you ever designed any joint use libraries, maybe a school library and a public library, or a customer service centre and a library? Anything from your end?
Yes, we are currently working on 3 projects actually that have school libraries that are integrating a community library within. And I've probably done 2 libraries in the past that have integrated community libraries, one of them very successfully, one of them not so. But the biggest challenge that we've got on the ones that we're designing at the moment is how do you, it is about zoning, as Karen says, it's about creating those zones, because particularly with the school library, how do you do it in such a way that, the public can't access the school parts of the building? Well, so that's really quite key in what we're doing at the moment. And although they're wanting study rooms to be available to the public, or meeting rooms as well, but it's about putting special locks on the door as well to make sure that they can't get into the rest of the building. So it's a lot more than just thinking about how you can integrate them from 2 different, and it's how you physically make them work integrated.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. So it's 1854. There's still nearly 200 people just on the call, but you've been on the call for nearly 2 hours now. Yeah. So I really think we need to sort of wind the sort of session up. And obviously you've put so many sort of questions in there, and you've basically given us some thoughts about maybe another seminar on AI and libraries, perhaps, and design across there. So Dr. Abdullah, do you want to just basically sum up the session and how we might be able to get a response to some of the questions?
Perfect. Yeah, there is many questions, but we're trying to stick to the time. And as I said, that this is a brainstorming roundtable more than just a session. So let me wrap it up with one comment on what Daniela mentioned regarding to the library support to mental health. By the way, my PhD was about bibliotherapy, and I found that the schizophrenic patients, it's the first Arabic one in the regions about this, and I found that there is a very, very big potential in the library and the vital role to work on this area about making the resources available and acquire both printed and also electronic and maybe application for the people, just to have this suggested readings or applications to support the mental health. This is a comment. And the question that I need just to wrap it up, it's for all the speakers can give their thoughts about it. What's your expectation for the future of library design, especially with this rapidly technology that we are taking our breath very hard just to cope up with it. So your expectation for the future of library design.
Okay, so I'll start and then we'll give everyone sort of chance. And very, very sort of briefly, I think we've got to up our game. People will, we want people to come to libraries, they will want to come to libraries. So it's not this aspect of they have to come to the library. So we've got to make our libraries as customer centric as possible and develop that wow factor, because they have to want to come if we're going to have a future. So that's me. Karen, and then hand over to...
Just said what I was going to say, don't have to come anymore, so they have to want to come. I think you just make very beautiful, functional, safe, comfortable spaces. And Alexander asked a question about accessibility, and I would just say, if we need to make we need to fight for our libraries. We need to be out there saying this is a really important service that's being offered. Come out from behind the shadows and stand up for libraries. They're so important.
Yeah. Danielle?
And if I could just say, obviously we're all about creating those wow spaces, but the biggest thing for me is not just creating those wow spaces, but the program management that you do for the activities that will happen in those spaces will make them stay relevant and stay popular. So as much as you want to make those spaces look nice, make sure that you run the right programming of activities in the background that will happen in those spaces.
And have the right resources.
And finally,
Bashir,
to
you have to elaborate.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. We are still talking about libraries. The concept is really very, very different from years ago, and we still talk about libraries, and we will talk about libraries in 10 or 20 years. And what is important is the well-being, is sharing, is welcoming. This is the most important thing, and I think this is the basis of what will be very stable and what is important for our projects.
Okay, thank you so much. And basically, it's been absolutely a privilege to share this sort of session today with you all under the auspices of sort of designing sort of libraries and the Naseej Academy. As Nick said, keep a lookout on our Designing Libraries website. There's lots of resources and information available, and hope this isn't going to be the final seminar that we do. Everyone have a good evening, and I think they will share this recording at some point. So much appreciated, and have a good evening. It's a good evening for us in the UK. I'm not sure what time is it in the Middle East roughly.
Yeah, I think it's almost about 9 p.m.
All
dear,
right, okay.
oh dear, thank you, attendees.
Thank you for all the attendees who persevered for nearly 2 hours. So that's been absolutely great.
Yeah, it's an exceptional session. So thank you so much. Thank you, Ayub. You did a great job for arranging for this one. I would like to thank Karen and Daniela and Bashir. You give this mixed flavor of the content of this one. And we for sure thank all the attendees, and we are looking to have them again in other sessions. Thank you guys very well. Thank you. Appreciate it. And let's meet again in another session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.